I'm Kedar Ahmed, and you're watching rptv. Today we're diving into one of the most crucial conversations in our community: how we shape the future of development. The roadmap for development, which took place at the Urban Pavilion in Regent Park, is a project of community in public. CP Planning is a nonprofit practicing a human rights approach to community planning. CP envisions creating sustainable, inclusive growth that benefits everyone, from residents to businesses. But with new projects come new challenges. And today, we're exploring how our city plans to navigate them. Stay with us as we break down the key priorities and strategies for growth, and the voices driving these changes forward.
They have to increase their plant base. We have to increase their plant.
My name is Kumsa Bakar. I'm here today representing my organization, the Toronto Community Benefits Network. We're happy to be here to celebrate CB Planning's annual party and event. As an organization that's really committed to ensuring that when development happens, that communities benefit. And so really, as we see the revitalization happening in Regent Park, we really want to make sure that the local community really benefits from the redevelopment that's happening here. And so really excited about today's event, but also all the connections and networking that will happen to really make sure that, not only the redevelopment of Regent Park, but also the redevelopment of our communities, our city, the growth that's happening in our region is done in a way that's inclusive and includes everybody. And so I'm really excited about that, to be part of something like this today.
Okay, Regent Park and friends across the city of Toronto, we're here at the World Urban Pavilion to speak about equitable planning, to address systemic racism and discrimination in the planning process, empowering residents just like you in determining what gets built in their community. So we're right here in the heart of the city in Regent Park to speak to the importance of having community-led development where community is at the heart of the urban planning process. And also to celebrate some recent victories, like the implementation of OPA 558, which is affordability based on income. So I hope you join us at future events and listen to the amazing panel and discussions that we're going to have tonight that's focused on ensuring that community is centered in people and not for profit. So let's have that wonderful conversation today. Yeah, this is an important event because it's an opportunity to not just celebrate our victories by making sure that all levels of government respect an income-based definition when it comes to addressing affordable housing, but it's an opportunity to highlight why Regent Park is advocating for more social housing, for more rent geared to income housing, for a 50-50 split when it comes to market and social housing, so that we could achieve our goal of social cohesion and inclusion. So I'm here to welcome participants from all across the city of Toronto, many of them professional planners, to speak to the Regent Park example and to work with them in solidarity to make sure that we address the housing crisis by investing in communities instead of offering hundreds of millions of dollars in bailouts to for-profit developers. So that's what we're here for, and I hope you will join us and work with us every step in the way to make sure that everyone has access to housing, which is a basic human right. Thank you.
If you're having fun, you say, hey, hey, hey. All right. If you're looking forward to an amazing event with some fantastic speakers who are going to inspire you, I want to hear you sit down, find a seat. I know you're having a lot of debate conversations. And so we're going to jump into
Shut up.
There is nothing better than the sound of having a conversation, and a lot of really great things being discussed. Some people were meeting for the first time, maybe you met, folks in the room before, and you're catching up. That's what tonight's all about. Today is about celebrating all the great things, the new things, and the old things coming together, and the resistance to know that, and continue to work in support of community. And, when we're thinking about community, we're really grateful actually for many things. One of these things is also the resistance that we see within the Indigenous communities that we know are such a great testament to the power of staying true to your identity, and to know that despite the pressures that put you down, you can get up, and that you have your ancestors who have been pushing just as hard, and you will be pushing just as hard for those to come. And so we acknowledge the lands we are leading on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Sagas, the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Native peoples. We also know that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, the Sagas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties signed with multiple Sagas and Chippewa bands. So the roadmap for redevelopment plans to enhance systemic racism is all about looking at the historic context as well as building a future that enables us to live thriving, vibrant lives. And a key barrier to that ability to live vibrant is the fact that when we are in positions of precarity, renting, or we're considered to be a lower class, then we are at great risk of being displaced. And so we cannot discuss displacement without first acknowledging that Indigenous peoples were the first to be displaced from this land. And we can see now the impacts of that where today, we can see that Indigenous peoples are amongst the most the highest proportion of people found in homeless populations. And so, in our work, we strive to build relationships with Indigenous communities to support this, that it is not about the income that you make, it's about the color of your skin. We all deserve the right to housing and to home and to community. And a big part of this theme this year also is going to be about social capital. And so I'm going to get into that a bit later today, but first I'm going to also share with you our African ancestry acknowledgement. So we acknowledge all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or generations past, and those of you who came here involuntarily, particularly those who brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. So, on the topic of social capital, what is social capital? Social capital is something that I've actually really been diving into the past 2 years. I think the Toronto Foundation actually they came up with a really great report in 2022 talking about social capital in Toronto. And so social capital is really about 4 key things, and I'm going to remember at least 2 of them live for you, right here. Is that this one? Okay. So one of them is about actually feeling like those in your neighborhood would be there to support you when you need it. Another one is being able to have trust in others. And so a big part of social capital, actually, when we look at that research by the Toronto Foundation, is being able to stay in your neighborhood. When we looked at the difference between how homeowners experience and their levels of social capital and connection to community versus renters, the results are quite stark. So renters are severely less likely to have deeper levels of connections and trust with their neighbors, whereas homeowners are more likely to feel that relationship. The study also found that homeowners, about 70% of them had lived in the same neighborhood for 10 years or more, where it was renters who lived in this same neighborhood of 10 years or more, only 40% of the time. And so how does this relate back to our African ancestral acknowledgement? So last year, the city of the University of Toronto released an amazing documentary, and in that documentary, there was an amazing woman named Amina who from Vancouver. She spoke about the fact that Black communities being consistently displaced due to discrimination and lack of access to own and have secure housing. Actually, we have seen great destruction of our communities. And so what happens when you're being pushed out of your neighborhood and when your social capital is having to be destroyed and you're having to rebuild it, well then that just creates a cycle of poverty. And so with this history of enslavement and theft of our cultures and communities, we acknowledge that there is a lot of work to be done to heal and to build back what was taken from us.
And now, we will hear from Walid Kongali Ali and Sundaz Balata, who bring unique perspectives on community-driven development. Walid focusing on Regent Park's achievements in social cohesion and equitable housing, and Sundaz highlighting the role of participatory planning and inclusive engagement in urban revitalization.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Yes, I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of friendly faces. Welcome to Regent Park, my friends. And for those of you who are Swifties, so if you missed out on the concert today, thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for spending your time with us tonight while we discuss an important topic. Not just the social development plans, but equitable development. So I want to start off by saying it's an honor to welcome you all here in Regent Park, a place with a proud history as the home of Canada's first community-led social development plan. This plan stands as a testament to our collective commitment to creating a community defined by social cohesion, inclusion, and equity. And if you look at this wonderful panel right here, I'd love for you to come and learn more about the Social Development Plan. We have 4 working groups and committees. We're able to secure $2.5 million from the City of Toronto, which has led to some significant results. One of the most remarkable ones was in 2023, we had 0, take this in, 0 gun-related deaths in our community for the first time ever. And I would like to give that to the residents of Regent Park who were so committed to the goal of social cohesion and inclusion. And we actually went farther by demanding community benefits. And I see Brian from Tridel here and other folks. We were able to secure $26.8 million in community benefits for the decades to come. So we want to ensure that this investment is sustainable in the long term. Today's launch of the redevelopment roadmap represents not only a bold step forward in addressing systemic racism in our land use planning, but also a vital call to action. As I've said before, equitable community planning must be rooted in the lived experiences of those who understand their neighborhoods intimately. And you can read my quote in the report. We need grassroots, resident-led initiatives to drive sustainable development. And it's essential, and I mean this, it's essential that planners from within the community are compensated fairly for their vital contributions. Volunteer-led efforts have advanced equitable land use despite funding limitations. But for real impact, we must bridge the gap between intention and effective implementation through substantial investments in community-driven labor and planning. So as we gather today, I want us to reflect on recent victories that affirm our vision. First of all, a couple of weeks ago, we heard some amazing news. There was a commitment by the City of Toronto that the 637 new affordable units will be based on income. It's a big win. It will not be based on 80% of market or whatever made up definition people want to put forward. It was big, it would be based on income, and that's a big, big win. Meaning families would be able to afford to actually live in our communities in truly affordable units. Ensuring that housing remains truly accessible as well this is a powerful example of progress when communities work together. I want to give a shout out to FOSTRA, the Federation of Neighborhood Associations serving in Toronto, the Coalition for Equitable and Inclusive Development, all these amazing stakeholders that actually work with all of us to make this a reality. The other thing that I want to quickly say is that at the same time, we must also address the challenges ahead. Like the recent approval at City Council just yesterday of a $325 million bailout for developers. This just happened. And I argued in my letter to council that actually could help us subsidize over 45,000 rent-geared to income units. Right? 45,000. It costs $8,000 a year to house a family in an RGI unit. This is from the Housing Secretariat's own numbers. So, we need to work towards sustainable development on public lands, which will drive away this notion of financialization of housing. And I want to reiterate, this $325 million bailout for developers risks diverting essential public funds away from investments that our communities desperately need, especially when it comes to amenities, public amenities, parks, right? All the things that actually bring value to our communities. Together, and I'm urging all of you to support this effort by the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, we continue to work towards a 50-50 balance of social and market housing in Regent Park. Let's not forget, Regent Park was 100% social housing community. Now it's almost 70% market, almost 30% social housing. So we are pushing our advocacy at the forefront of making sure that we have a balanced approach, which is what not just what we're talking about, but what we practice within our neighborhood association. We have 50% representation on our board and on our committees to make sure that everyone has a say in what happens in our community. The roadmap will help guide our efforts in developing policies and partnerships that ensure every resident has the right to adequate, affordable housing and access to opportunities within the land use planning economy. And before I conclude my remarks, you know I'm a community organizer, right? And as a community organizer, we like to do chants. So my chant is a simple chant. And it's an infamous chant in Regent Park, but it's also known across many racialized communities across the city of Toronto. So the chant goes like this. Very simple. Not about us, without us. Now I'm going to say it, and I want you all to repeat it with me. Not about us. Not about us. Not about us. Without us. And that is an important reminder that residents cannot be an afterthought. Communities cannot be an afterthought in the development planning process. We must co-develop, if not lead the process by which what gets built in our communities, right? So finally, I want to say thank you. Thank you for all of you, especially the Swifties. Thank you for all of you for being here and for your commitment to building a fairer, more inclusive future. Let's take this opportunity to drive meaningful change that will benefit not just Regent Park, but communities across the city of Toronto. Thank you so much.
Can you guys hear me? I have a very loud voice. I can just echo.
No.
Yeah?
Hi.
Hi. seeing, I've made some notes for myself, but what you're seeing on the screen, essentially just in terms of geography and context, you're seeing Cairo, Egypt. So you're seeing a view of Cairo, Egypt. And what you probably, and it's basically a view of the informal settlements that exist in Cairo. You talk about, in some areas we call them ghettos, in other areas we call them bantustans. There's different names for them, but in Egypt they call them informal settlements. And what is on the screen is, you probably see sort of a variety of heights, of different buildings. You see some sprinkled greenery. It's unintentional, probably stubborn, that's sort of there. You see vacant buildings, so there's quite a few vacant buildings in your shot there. And probably you assume some very poor urban planning, and inadequate services, and and you can imagine that probably the roads sort of match a bit of the buildings. What you don't see on the screen is you don't see the strength of community that exists there. You don't see the social fabric. You don't see the ingenuity and the creativity to essentially make an uninhabitable place inhabitable. So these areas, they have some public services. They've squatted and so they've built this semi-legal housing. And so they're able to get some public services, but not all. So my introduction to urban planning was actually working for the German federal government, funded by the European Union, a lot of money. And I was working on a bilateral cooperation, that means country-to-country cooperation, to essentially bring about participatory urban planning to these settlements and be able to link them to the core of the city. So these aren't on the periphery of the city. These are located right in the smack dab in the middle of Cairo, abutting rich and privileged neighborhoods. But they just lack the services. I see some of you who are nodding, so some of you might be Egyptian in the room and might know that. So that's my introduction to urban planning. I actually have a background in political science, international relations, comparative politics, and I sort of ended up working for the German government in Egypt, and then moving from place to place, essentially to a lot of this participatory urban planning. When I came back to Toronto, I decided to work for Toronto Community Housing as a revitalization manager. So you would think that in the developed country, so in Canada, it's going to be so significantly different to the developing world, but there's a lot of similarities, right? We have the similarities of underinvestment, for example. You have the similarities of a state of disrepair that is caused by that underinvestment. You have similarities of like a very tight social fabric, tight-knit communities that are going to go through this significant transformation. And then from there, working 4 years for Toronto Community Housing, and then moved off to the city. And at the city, I started with working on the community development plan with some really cool people, Imar Molson right here, geniuses at the city, where we developed a model around equitable land use planning. And so how could we do something like that? And we're doing it while building 2 community development plans, one in Jade and Finch and one in Downsview. I lead the Downsview Community Development Plan. We're going to talk a bit more about that, but that's sort of my introduction to planning.
Awesome, thank you, Sandus. And so I just want to remind everybody here, so the Roadmap Annual Party has always been an arts-based event. We've had musicians and we've had dancers, and so this year the theme is that we are the art, and so that's why we have the photo booth, we have the stickies, and we also have a poet in the room who will be performing a poem at the end of the night based on the conversations that come out today. And each of the panelists have been asked to share a picture, and in that picture to communicate what is it that got them inspired in the planning, and that picture's representation of that. So thank you, Sandus, for sharing that story about Egypt and that alignment or connection it has here in Toronto. So our first question is, so can you describe what is a CEP and what opportunities does it open up in the redevelopment of neighborhoods?
So if I'm talking very generally about what a community development plan is, it's a plan that sort of circumvents typical land use planning. So in typical land use planning, you engage the community, of course, to prepare a vision, you put some policies together that doesn't exactly name specific communities, it doesn't name equity issues, so it gets at things very generically. So, what are you doing? You're You're figuring out, okay, what's the road network look like? How many houses do we need? What type of housing? What's the unit sizes of those housing? What sort of community services and facilities do you need? But you're not targeting any specific community. And so what the community development plan does is it circumvents sort of the Planning Act. Is it okay? I feel like I'm echoing. Am I echoing? No? It's just in my head? Okay, great. Fantastic. So what it does is it circumvents a bit of the planning ecosystem that we live in. So the Planning Act only names one specific community, Indigenous. It names rights holders and the duty to consult, as you know, and it doesn't name anything else. And so our official plan right now that exists names confronting anti-Black racism, but again, not in a specific or tremendous amount of detail. And the secondary plans sort of follow. And so what we did with community development plans and building a model was trying to look at the entire planning framework for communities that are undergoing significant investment and have an equity issue. And how do we name specific needs of the community and walk that into the secondary plan, your urban design guidelines, your master environmental servicing plan, and anything else that sort of follows from the planning framework, so that we can lock it in from a policy perspective and then be able to act on it in the community development plan where we name specific communities.
Amazing. Right, so I guess the opportunity of the CDP that it enables you to actually name some of the disparities that exist within the neighborhood and to create solutions for them.
Right, I forgot your second part of the question. There's three opportunities essentially when it comes to a community development plan, okay? The first opportunity is that we're able to strengthen reconciliation commitments. So we're not just looking at the duty to consult, but we're looking at outcomes-driven engagement. What is it that the Indigenous communities want to see in Downsview? What is it that they need from a land use perspective? So we can lock it in. We also do the same thing with anti-Black racism and then locking in the equity lens in a planning framework. So those three pieces. The second thing it does is it identifies new opportunities that don't typically or wouldn't typically exist in the secondary plan or within the secondary plan. So if I'm speaking to Downsview for a second, I would say there were a variety of opportunities, but I'll only speak to three. The first is that we were able to put in policies around rent guarantee income. That would have never happened if there wasn't a community development plan, because it's private lands. You don't do rent guarantee income on private lands, as you know. You can lock in affordable housing requirements, but you're not going to lock in any RTI, rent guarantee income. So that's the first thing we were able to do. The second thing we were able to do, and we did the same thing in Jane and Finch, was anti-displacement policies. So we were able to put policies around anti-displacement. For Downsview, it's largely empty. So we're largely talking about overwhelmingly vacant land, but we do have a supply depot. It has a merchant market. It's got thousands of merchants that go through there. And so how do we lock in anti-displacement for commercial, essentially, retailers? The third thing we were able to do was put in policies around affordable commercial retail. So encouraging affordable commercial retail on the site. And we're talking about 1,300 acres of land. So that's a significant, secondary plan area and a significant redevelopment that's happening within our city. The third thing, there's one last thing that we were able to do with CDPs or opportunities, which is a collaboration tool. It allows us to collaborate, so it allows the private sector to collaborate with government, so municipalities, provinces, federal government, and the nonprofits. So it's a tool that locks everybody in because nobody owns the community development plan. The community development plan is owned by everyone and everyone has a role in it.
Amazing. All right, so I'm going to actually jump a couple questions. You just dropped a lot of great things in there about the things that community development plans can do. And in order to meet with communities, these are exactly the things that people work tirelessly for to secure. And so the CDPs open up those opportunities. And so my question is, so what are the challenges then to implementing a community development plan, and how can stakeholders work together to carry out transformative plans?
Yeah, so we have a lot of challenges. The first one is that this is new. We have never done this at the City of Toronto before, okay? The two communities that are going through are Jane and Finch and Downsview. So the newness of it means we have to manage expectations. It means that we completed the design for both communities, but we've never implemented this before. So what does implementation look like? how feasible, how realistic. Let's temper expectations and start off with building these two before we expand out. And then we need to think about building the infrastructure. So what does the infrastructure look like to build this plan? You need a monitoring evaluation system. You need a rigorous sort of community advisory structure that, you know, allows for governance, that allows for steering and advice, that triages problems when they come up. So this is the first layer of challenges. The second layer is regulatory mechanisms. So when we think about land use plans, and you look at your secondary plan, and you look at your urban design guidelines, you're gonna see some policies that require things, but overwhelmingly you're gonna see a lot of encouragement policies. And the encouragement policies allows a developer or an applicant to either engage in it or not engage in it. The CDP sort of follows in tandem with a lot of those encouragement policies. We've been able to enshrine those encouragement policies from a downstream perspective in the secondary plan, in the planning framework, but how do you get a developer to actually do it? And so what we're doing is we're not applying the carrot, we're not applying sort of the stick, but we're using a carrot approach. How do we work in partnership together? We cannot comply you to do all of these things. We actually can't. We don't have the legal mechanisms to do so. So how do we work together, bring in a nonprofit when a nonprofit is needed to be able to accomplish this? And so that's the second layer of challenge. And I think that brings me to a greater sort of principle that I wanted to outline, which is that we are not setting up a culture where we hold anyone's feet to the fire. I want to say that, and I want to be clear that there has to be accountability, but the accountability is for everyone. The success of the plan depends on everyone. So we're really trying to set up this collegial partnership type of ecosystem that supports and makes it possible for these actions to be accomplished. Because developers are okay to do the actions. They're happy to engage in conversations like that. Our plan has the developers co-sign all the actions that they're responsible for, but then it comes to, well, how do you realize that action? Who's going to help me realize that action? So I think that's big.
Really, thank you for sharing. So, as you mentioned that it's really about having a partnership perspective is a really key part of it, but then also knowing that this is something that the city is also just exploring now for the first time, and so it's going to be taking some time also to kind of figure out what these two community plans are going to look like, and then you might be getting people on your door asking for one for the neighborhood, and it's a process we're going to all be figuring out together. Is that kind of what we?
Well, I'm saying that when it comes to implementation, we've never done implementation before, and so we have to look at the implementation in these two communities before we start expanding it out. I think the other piece to it is the city has to hold a pen on this. It has to be the convener, only because the city right now regulates applications. The city is the only entity to approve or deny a development application. As such, we see it as being confined right now here. In the future, could it look different? Sure, it could look different, but it just depends on how our implementation sort of goes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. So I just want to let folks know that we do have time also for audience questions. So if there's anything that you'd like to ask us on this, please get your minds percolating. I'm going to ask just one more question. I'm going to go out to the audience to see if folks have anything they'd like to ask about. So my question here, you've talked about partnerships. So I'm wondering if there's any other details that make for good ingredients for a successful community development plan.
Yeah, so the good ingredients, so let's talk about the criteria of the community development plan. Criteria number one is that there is a secondary plan that is being developed for the area or updated for the area. And the secondary plan is part of that planning framework. So urban design guidelines, whatever other development deliverables are there. So that's criteria number one. Criteria number two is that the community is undergoing significant investment. Significant. Jane and Finch is $2 billion in LRT. Downsview, we're talking $30 billion. We're talking about a community, it's a city within a city. You're talking about 115,000 new residents, 63,000 units, 52,000 jobs. It's a massive site. So we need significant investment. The third criteria is that there's an equity consideration. So there is an equity issue in that community that we can draw on. So that's in terms of the criteria. After that, what we need in terms of ingredients is robust engagement. We need to be able to engage meaningfully with people. We often, when it comes to planning and planning type engagement, and I'm guilty of this as well, we speak in a language that community does not fully understand, and so we need to be able to make that language accessible. We need to be able to build capacities for people to be able to contribute concretely to what the land use plan could look like in the future, what they actually need from a built form perspective, from the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure needs. Then it would be helpful if we had knowledge of the private sector and what the private sector is trying to do in those communities. In Jane and Finch, while we were designing the model, we were able to work with the Jane and Finch Mall. We were able to see what they were doing. They were doing a lot of pre-engagement. It's so critical. And so I think it's really important to develop relationships very early on with the private sector. In Downsview, we were able to do a lot of work with the two larger property owners, Northwest and Canada Lands Company. And so we've seen that that has been huge in terms of the robustness of the design itself. Okay, I can't speak to implementation yet. I think another piece is around the integrative sort of communication or mechanism that we use as city divisions. Because again, it's not one city division that is responsible for those needs. There's a vast number of city divisions that implement ultimately the land use, that inform and implement the land use. And so being able to get all of us in a room together, being able to get different commitments from different divisions, and being able to build and cultivate those relationships with the private sector. I think these are all the pieces that are necessary.
Okay, great. So I think, yeah, I don't know if anybody else is feeling this, but when you drop the $1 billion number, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be working with my communities to see if we can get accept, like if we would meet the mark to like, okay, we're gonna get some support because it's a very significant development. I have some folks in the room who've been telling me about how much development's in their neighborhoods, and so I understand that, you know, if you're gonna be investing municipal resources, it has to really be something that's gonna be robust and to scale, right? And I say this only because, you know, the communities are organizing for the benefit of themselves and trying to figure out how to get support, and the issue is that we don't have enough resources to actually help every neighborhood that deserves it.
Absolutely, I think city resources is definitely a big consideration. But the reason we created the criteria around significant investment happening in a community is because the community development plan is ultimately going to speak to housing. It's going to speak to the community services and facilities that are needed. So this has to be a community that's undergoing significant investment in order for the actions to actually qualify, you know, from a CDP perspective.
I'm going to throw it to the audience. Are there any questions? Here.
I could just talk.
I think that would be violating the rules.
Hi, you mentioned that about building community capacity briefly, about how that's like necessary in order to make sure the resources are distributed equitably in these social development plans. What kind of tools do you use to build community capacity? Because I know it's a difficult thing, especially with communities that are economically depressed, right? They have like fewer resources, less free time. You know, they can't afford babysitters maybe. So like, yeah, how do you encourage and support communities in order to build community capacity so that they can engage more meaningfully with the social development plan?
So it's a community development plan. I just wanted to clarify that because those are two very different tools. But in terms of the community development plan and sort of engagement, that's a really good question. I think for Downsview, I'll get into sort of the nitty-gritty of Downsview, just to give you a sense of what we did. First, it's on the city, I think, at that point to put the resources to provide a variety of engagement tools. So it can't be one thing. What you were mentioning in terms of childcare would be a meeting, an in-person meeting. And at the city, we've done in-person meetings as it relates to planning consultations that are limited, that are attended by few just like you said, and that community doesn't necessarily feel like they're fully represented. With Downsview, we had open houses, and we did them in the library, so we made sure that, it was right next to the children's section, and we came to people. So that was the first thing we did. We did surveys, we went into parks, we went into schools, we went into different areas. We did online surveys, we did online meetings, we did in-person meetings, and we did a variety of meetings, so it wasn't big community meetings, because that's often where people don't feel like they can talk, but focus group meetings, deep dialogue, so like smaller sessions. We got agencies, we got residents, we got a variety, we got businesses to sort of speak to us. We went to the merchant market and did surveys with them. So I think it's really on the city at that point, and this is why this comes back to what Cheryl was talking about in terms of resources. It's on the city to be able to say, okay, we're going to go out, we're going to put this effort, we're going to put the staffing necessary to go out and seek feedback from people where they are, and provide a range of opportunities so that they're able to come in and out of the process as they wish.
A question about developers. You made the, scenario very seamless. So I'm just interested to know how did you get developers on board with your plan?
Yeah, so I think for Downsview, it's very, very unique. So Downsview is, like I said, the secondary plan area is 540 hectares of land, so 1,300 acres, and 2 property owners, so North Crescent Canada Lands, own about half of it. They own 520 acres. So we worked, and they did 2 years of pre-engagement before the city even came, or made the decision to update their secondary plan. So they were really rooted and really interested in community engagement to start with. So we lucked out in that way. And so we walked them through this process of the community development plan and building the model and building the plan and the action plan for Downsview. And so we were lucky there. I think with Jane Finch Mall, again, they were developers that were really interested in pre-engagement. They got a group together, they funded it themselves, and they had years of engagement to be able to figure out what's happening with Jane Finch Mall. So when I did make it seem seamless, and it's not seamless for sure, you're gonna have developers or applicants that you can work with that are interested in things and have already made some public commitments themselves, and so you're capitalizing on it. And then you're going to have applicants or developers that are not as interested. And the importance of the community development plan is that it's council adopted. So those are political process. And again, we embed policies in the secondary plan that support the community development plan. So that relationship sort of imposes certain things on applications. But again, in terms of compliance and implementation, we're still going to, this is still a wait and see process, so I can't give you feedback on that yet. You're welcome.
One last question. I got 3 people pointing to Rella. So she's done really good organizing to get that done. All right.
I'll be around, so like in the break or when we finish, anybody who has remaining questions can come up to me and ask me. But
quick question. First of all, I'll be brief, Cheryl, I promise. But the first question is: 2 developers own half of all this land. So did they, when they bought this land? I hope it was for fair market rate, and I hope that they put into provisions that we need not just housing, but we need community spaces and parks and libraries and swimming pools and all that too. I know that Section 37 no longer exists, but if somebody gets this hunk of land that's that, no wonder the developer is willing to work with the community. And frankly, community engagement in the developer's code of ethics, community development is a checkbox, and I have seen community development meetings where they take those lovely sticky notes and put them into the garbage of filing, like they don't really consider them First question, did they make provision? Okay, bye.
Sorry, you can't ask your second question. Your first question was hilarious. I love it. Let's speak about Downsview. So how does Downsview actually come to be? Downsview used to have an airport. It's called Bombardier Airport. And they used to build planes there essentially and fly them. So they had a runway, it was 2.1 kilometers. But they flew the planes to test them out before they then sent them to Montreal to get dressed up and sold. Bombardier decided to vacate and go to Pearson. And they sold the land to North Crest and Canada Lands Company. North Crest is a private sector arm of the public sector pension fund. So the federal public sector pension fund. However, they are a private sector. Second, but why is that important and why did I talk about the pension fund? Because they're in it for the long haul. They're not developers looking to flip very quickly. They're actually looking to stay in because they're pension, so they're looking to stay long. And make profit, of course. Every developer is trying to make profit. The second company is Canada Lands Company. They are a crown corporation on behalf of the federal government that manages surplus land. So that's what Canada Lands is. So they're both developers that are not purely in the sense of the private sector, the way that we understand it. They own 520 acres, the two of them, together. In terms of your question around community services and facilities, so that's a really good question. When it comes to planning for growth, which is where the secondary plan is triggered, so we're planning for growth in a specific area, we are going to communicate with all of our divisions and see how many daycares do we need, how many libraries do we need, how many schools do we need, right? How many rec facilities, so on and so forth, and what do the rec facilities need to look like, and what needs to be inside. So we definitely do that work, we have it, and it's part of the secondary plan, so it's listed out exactly what is going to occur in Downsview. In terms of the funding gap, there is a funding gap. Like that's the province ended up capping. So as you know, they capped the land at 4%. So essentially, developers only have to give you up to 4% of that land. They can't give you beyond that, which ended up restricting municipalities' sort of budgets around CSF, around community services and facilities. It used to be called Section 37. This was a different world. So there is a gap, but you're going to have to, as a city, work with partners and figure out how to meet that gap. But ultimately, the city has this has language around a complete community and a facilities first approach. So we are required to deliver those facilities, all of us together. So those facilities will get delivered, but how do they get delivered and when do they get delivered? These are things that we're still working on. You actually have a follow-up question. She looks really interested. Okay. Sure.
I just want to say, when we were developing the land, when we were representing the community as building the better Bloor Dufferin, the land of Bloor and Dufferin, all the way through it, the developers were promising the new schools would be as good or better than the previous schools.
Yeah.
Previous schools had auditoriums and swimming pools. New schools don't. But at some point, every iteration, the community got less, even though it was negotiated for and signed for. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Arella. So I want to let everybody know also, Arella is our queen of yes and, as shown today, and she actually yes anded her and her community to winning millions of dollars for community and affordable housing community space. So it works, right? It works. And yeah, she's also a community leader that we work a lot with. So really appreciating you, Arella. And so, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us on this.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Kedar again, and today we've been delving into an essential topic for our city's future, the roadmap for redevelopment. As our community continues to grow and evolve, it's vital that we have clear, inclusive, and sustainable plan in place. The roadmap is about more than just building infrastructure. It's about creating a framework that ensures the needs of all residents are met. while balancing environmental, social, and economic considerations. In today's panel discussion, we'll explore the key priorities behind this development strategy, the challenges we face in making it a reality, and the opportunities it creates for all of us, from housing to sustainability and community engagement to economic growth. This conversation will shine a light on how we can collectively shape the future of our city. Stay with us as we hear from experts, leaders, and community advocates who will share their perspectives and ideas on how we can move forward together. Now let's dive into the video.
We have a really nice panel coming up, and like Cheryl said, it's really on the theme of social capital, financial capital, and really thinking about how we can get from that 3.5% non-market housing to that 7%, which is the average of the OECD countries. We're lagging behind, and it would really contribute a lot to the economy, $136 billion to the economy if we were able to do so, according to a study from Deloitte. So we know that we have a lot of work to do, we all know that, but we know that it's going to be done through solidarity, through partnerships, through working together, cross-sector partnerships. So we have different actors from different parts of the sector with us today, so you can all come out here, and all come and sit, and I'll introduce them individually. We have, just like we did earlier with students, we have an image that each of them brought to us to start to get to know them, so that then we can learn about them without just a dry hi, this is my name, this is what I do. So to start us off, I'll start with Zach. He'll be going first. The mic is on there, but he'll be going first. So Zach is the co-director of the Kensington Market Community Land Trust, and so he works to prevent the displacement of local residents and businesses while advocating for affordable housing and equitable economic development. And they own and operate a mixed-use building with 12 residential units, I'm correct, in Kensington Market. And Zach also holds a Master of Planning and Urban Development from TMU, and has previously worked as a development manager in streetcar developments and as a planning assistant with the TTC. So we put the image that Zach has drawn. If he can introduce himself.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'll go really quick. This is a construction site not too far from here. This is Queen and Broadview. This is Riverside Square. This is the site that I sweated and stressed and worked so hard on for many years, and came to the realization that the people that I truly care about will never afford a place there. So I think this was a good example for me of something I worked very, very hard on, and it's part of the picture, it's part of the development, it's part of the ecosystem. We need more supply, but I think working through this work, I kind of came to the realization that what we're doing here is maybe not the area that we need to focus on, and that this will never solve, I think, the issue that we have. It's part of the solution, but it's not the exact issue. So kind of wanted to talk about today with transitioning from private development into nonprofit work. So this was an image that I was going through my phone, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, I forgot that was my life. So.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I love how these images help to get to know a little bit about what you'll talk about later. The next up we have Robert. So Robert Walter Joseph is principal from Black Key Associates. He's a land use planner, specializing in affordable, nonprofit, and mixed-use housing and community projects, and his work really reflects the firm's commitment to community-oriented development with a focus on inclusive planning, practices, zoning, and development approvals. And he's a registered professional planner and regularly shares his expertise as he's doing today.
Thanks. Yeah, so this is, a few of you might recognize, this is the Barbican Centre in London. It is something of a contentious place. It is loved and hated by Londoners, but it's built on the city's old Roman wall. But what is interesting about it is it was built at a time where London was in a very particular context of rebuilding after the war. They had a challenge that they had to meet. They had to house people. They had to grow the city. We are in a very interesting context here in the city of Toronto and in Canada. We are in the midst of a housing crisis. We need to house people, so we face a very similar challenge. But the Barbican Centre is a council estate. residential estate that is not specifically built as affordable housing, it's built as mid-market housing. But it's a reminder that non-market housing is possible. When this was constructed, I think over a third of UK residents lived in government or government-built or government-funded housing. So the scale of the challenge needs a strong response. So yeah, this is my image that I'm trying to put this on right.
Thanks so much, Robert. Next, we have Michelle. So Michelle is the Executive Director of Women in Urbanism Canada, which is a new role, so congrats, Michelle. And an influential leader based in Peel region with decades of experience in poverty reduction. Her expertise is in community engagement, capacity building, policy development, and advancing affordable housing initiatives. And before joining Women in Urbanism Canada, she served as a national organizer at the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. Michelle.
Well, thank you. As you can see, that is a photo of me. And the reason why I chose this photo, because we were asked to pick a picture that reflected your reasoning of why you've gotten involved in the homelessness and housing space. So that was me, quite a long time ago actually, sleeping in my car. And I don't think at that time I probably would have self-identified as a person with lived experiences of homelessness or experiencing homelessness at that time. But here I am today. And it has been a 20+ year journey to get me to where I am today, to now be leading an amazing organization, but also have the opportunity in this privileged space to be amongst such incredible human beings and be part of this panel. So thank you.
Thanks so much. It's super important to have that lived experience, so really happy to have you on the panel. And last but not least, Daniel is the president of Main and Main, a leading mixed-use developer, and he oversees projects across Toronto and the Ottawa regions. He began his real estate career with CMHC in the 90s, followed by 7 years as a management consultant in real estate before transitioning into development. And he successfully managed an entitlement of over 1.4 million square feet of mixed-use development. On to you, Daniel.
Thank you. So I struggled with this assignment a lot. You know, there's a lot.
I had to remind him a lot.
She really did. Not because I forgot, because I was really, you know, there are a lot of images that do, you know, do make me feel strongly about the issue here, but I felt like an image of tents that people live in was not very respectful. You know, and I've done a lot of volunteer work in the affordable housing space, and sadly it's resulted so far in 0 units being built, so I have a really ambivalent sort of relationship with the work so far. But I do, sometimes when I'm, you know, having trouble finding motivation, this is your life in weeks, which you can go online and punch in your birthday, and it shows based on your expected age how far you have to go. And for, I don't know, maybe it's morbid or something, but for me it reminds me to wake up every day and try to be of service, do interesting work, have fun, be kind, all of those things. So anyway, this was my best stab of the assignment. So.
No, I think it's great. It has us, gets us thinking, and I think that's the feeling that we also have, that we have limited time here on this planet, so what we do with it is super important. And in the discussions that we had previous to the panel, we were discussing how to take this. What sort of way we should have this discussion. Should we be more on the optimistic side? Should we be on the reality side? So let's start with a reality check, courtesy of Robert, saying let's add this and the discussions, especially and Daniel. What are the main challenges? And I think in terms of funding, misalignments, the rapid loss of affordable housing that we're seeing, maybe tension between for-profit housing and community needs. How can we address these, and what are the real barriers that we're facing today? So kind of an open question to any of you who want to take a first stab at it.
I mean, I think First is I think a bit of a recognition that, you know, we're all in this room and likely also all frustrated about housing. We can't really sit up here as a panel and say, we have the solution, because we certainly don't. We are people that are really rapidly advancing affordable housing. And I say that sort of as an urban planner who feels like he has been rapidly advancing affordable housing. There's been a lot of new funding in the space. There's been the ability now finally to talk to communities. Previously, before things like community development plans existed, we would sit up in front of rooms, talk about secondary plans, talk about zoning, and communities would tell us, you know, we're afraid of being displaced, we're excited for these changes, we're not going to live here when these things are built. And so now there is a lot of interest and attention in this space about how do we keep people in space, how do we bring funding in place, how do we empower nonprofits to provide affordable housing for their communities. But then at the same time, we're really, as much as I'd love to pat myself on the back, I'm not doing any work at any scale that is fast enough to solve or address any issues. And so really, I think we have to acknowledge that things are not really working. The issue is not that we're not getting approvals fast enough. The issue is much, much larger.
And it's been decades in the making. It really has been. You know, you look back at history. I always look back at history when it comes to identifying sources of inept policy that has sort of transformed our livelihoods over decades. But then also, we also should be looking at solution making, and sometimes you can find that also in history as well. I think it's really important to, again, I'm going to take a positive spin to the situation that we're in, is that, again, I've never seen before, in the many, many years that I've been an advocate activist, but also I've ran in politics as well, having this issue being front and center on the ballot. For the very first time, you know, instead of going to the door and having people say, what are you talking about? There isn't any homelessness. It's like the door. That everyone is seeing it on their doorstep for the very first time. Everybody is struggling. And I think that there seems to be momentum, the drive, the desire to collaborate, and that's collaborate throughout different levels of government, that's collaborate through the nonprofit sector, that's collaborating and having authentic relationships with people we serve, and that's also collaborating with the various different systems and services that are also supporting people that are struggling right now. So I do think that there seems to be, despite the fact that we have some gloomy days ahead potentially in the political space, that there is, I think, a desire. I think that there is also just momentum and a trajectory that we need to really, really double down on solution making. I feel that energy here in this room. I feel that energy. So I think it keeps all of us going. Because we do see that, you know, for once in a long time, we are all speaking the same language.
I'm going to say that right now in our city, I think the analogy, we were on a call today actually, and I was talking about water in a bucket. Was that the analogy we were talking about today? It was basically like, we're building a lot of the new supply. Well, I don't think we're building enough because we're way under target. But in terms of the supply we're building, it's for every new affordable housing that's a purpose-built rental that we're building, we're losing 15 to 18 in Toronto. So it's like we're pouring water in a bucket as a whole. We're just digging a hole and just digging it deeper, not going up. And I think that's a thing that brings me a lot of sadness, is to know that we're hollowing out what is needed in our city, and by doing so, we're hollowing out the communities that have built this city. So I think that for a lot of us, when we talk about new supply, or we talk about new construction, or we talk about government financing for these things, we need to pause and think about, okay, those are needed, but what are we losing in the meantime? What are we losing on the way? And when we lose a unit, the replacement of that unit is unsustainable. Like the cost of preserving and protecting this existing unit far outmatches building new, but you lose community connections, you lose informal care networks, and you lose like important communities that are often marginalized and pushed out for years and years. So I think that is what brings me sadness. So to talk about optimism as the community land trust movement. If you look in Toronto, I can see other folks here from Chinatown, and I see folks all around the room from land trusts here, and it's across the country now, and I think people are finally resisting, just honestly saying, fuck this, like this is enough. Like no longer we're gonna stand back, no longer we get pushed around, and I think that brings me a lot of joy and optimism. It's like anything in this sector, I think people say, oh, I'm gonna do this, and they go, well, that won't solve the housing crisis. You know what I mean? It's like, well, nothing will, right? But if we try all these individual things, we work together, it's like, we're gonna try something. You know, the planet's on fire anyway, so we're trying our best in these little small pockets to do what we gotta do, and I think that gives me a lot of hope. So yeah, I'm with the Kensington Market Community Land Trust, and I'll talk more, but feel free to reach out to us or talk to us whenever. We're happy to help others.
So probably the most hopeful thing I'll say tonight is that we had a horrible housing crisis in Canada after the Second World War, and we fixed it for like a good 35, 40 years. We solved the thing, so it's something that we have done before, and that gives me some hope that it is doable to fix it again. I think Cheryl probably invited me to the panel, I think, because I know a little bit about financing housing, and I think now there's a couple big issues that we have with it. The first is that fundamentally it's too expensive to build housing in Canada, and a nonprofit housing developer, a private developer, it doesn't actually make a big difference. It costs to build a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto easily $500,000. You can build a better quality apartment in central Paris for probably 30% cheaper. We have a broken regulatory framework, broken supply chains. We have the housing system that we have has many, many priorities, but the quantity of housing that we produce is a secondary or tertiary, or I don't know how to conjugate like the 11th priority in the system, but the quantity of housing that we produce is, if you read planning reports in any Canadian municipality, they will go on at great length about the quality of housing, about all of these qualitative features of it, but planning departments and city councils are not getting up every day being like, well, how much housing did we produce this year? Is that enough? Is it too much? All of those things. And housing is really a necessary but not sufficient thing in my view. Like there is no one thing that alone will solve it, but there's a lot of pieces that are necessary, and having enough houses, regardless of their size, shape, whatever, location, all of those things, is absolutely a necessary precondition for housing justice. There's no way around it whatsoever. I think the government and lots of people are starting to kind of get it now. But as someone who builds housing, there are the hoops we jump through to do it are incredible. I don't know if you know this, but pretty much every municipality in Canada has a different building code. So when we build a building, if you build one here and then you want to take it 45 minutes down the road, there's a whole different building code, which strikes me as completely insane, but is a very accepted fact, like in the country. So if you want to innovate, you want to build more sustainable, more affordable housing, as an affordable housing provider, you will need to customize your project for every site. So I'll probably stop there because I can ramble. So yeah.
So from what I'm hearing, we're saying there's no silver bullet, obviously, because then we wouldn't be in this situation. And that there's many things that we need to do from the different actors, the different sectors. But maybe if you had a magic wand, if you had, if you're thinking, what is the one thing that I can do from my point of view within my own sector, within my own field, my own expertise? What unique strength and superpower do each of you bring? Thinking about your own part of the sector, what role do each of you need to play in order for us to get further towards, having more non-market housing and preserving also the affordable housing that's already here.
Let's go first. Not all at once.
So, as an urban planner, I mean, planners don't speak English all the time. I think we struggle to talk to communities. We think we do well talking to communities, but often we can't really align with what folks want to talk about. One thing that we do well, though, is we can really nerd out about policy and process and regulation. And that is my superpower. A lot of nonprofit organizations, a lot of community-serving nonprofits are in very good positions for representing their communities and often are able to provide very good and caring housing for folks. And so as a planner, I have worked with nonprofits and taken them from community-serving organizations that have done one thing into also being housing providers. And that, I think, is fantastic. And I think that we need more planners who are able to do that. We need a system that can encourage that. I think the planning system is more capable now of talking to nonprofit housing developers. Planning as a whole, I think, has sometimes been very afraid of development, and it is becoming less so. So, yeah, that's it.
So what's my superpower? That's a really good question. I think my superpower is my ability, I think, to establish multiple different relationships with different stakeholders and actors. As a person with lived experiences, and I guess that's sort of what I'm coming here representing. And as an advocate activist, and also a person who likes to connect the dots. What I think is really important is in research spaces, I've had the ability to work with incredible folks in politics and in organizing. Again, support lived experience groups to amplify their lived stories for change. That I really have found that the ability to educate and mobilize people to the ballot box on issues usually brings about substantial policy change when it comes to the government being erected. So I would like to see us have these conversations, but also we have to start talking to our neighbors about these solutions. We have to tell them what we want, how we want our communities to be, and tell them that I will only elect you if you invest in me, if you invest in my community members, and you invest in my city, my province, and my country. And I really feel that that is the conduit to change, is mobilizing citizenry for change. And I think also what's really important that CB planning is doing, many other experts here, is we can't transform community without knowing what the need is, or who they are, or what they do, or where they come from. And we have to start getting to know each other a little bit more. And foundationally, this work should be centered around what's the need. We don't just build to build. We don't just build to say we've met our quotas, 500 million homes, or whatever the case may be. But we're building according to the data, we're building according to the need. And we haven't been doing that for a very long time.
I thought when I first started this job that my superpower would be having a master's of planning, No, it's not at all. It's very useless. What I think is the important thing is being talkative and being social. And to build off your point, I'm realizing now, like, we've been fed a lie. Like, we've been told this idea that you work hard, you're gonna get a little condo, you're gonna get a house, that we're all gonna get private ownership, that we're all gonna get a job and do okay, and it's not working. Our city is failing. We have so many neighbors in our community who live in tents. We have so many friends I know who are being pushed out of the city, people who are spending 50, 60% of their costs on to live, right? So I think that, like, I think the superpower is just, it's talking, it's socializing. I'm so hungry for that right now, and I want to meet people, and I want to work together, I want to create allyship. Because together, it's like, we're the majority. The majority of people in Canada are kind of fed up right now. We're stuck, it's like, the system feels broken, it feels wrong, and I think we all feel it, right? But then it's like, day to day, you have to live on to do what you're doing, and then you vote for these people who don't care about you, and you contribute and take part in a system that doesn't work. And we're told that this is how it has to be. It's like, no, it does not have to be this way. Like we said before, we changed before, we built the supply we needed. Other countries have social housing. It's a thing they do, right? And it's like, for some reason, we've been fed this idea that we're just stuck in this and what to do, and I don't think that's the case. And I'm so happy here to be honored to be welcomed into the Regent Park community and to have been welcomed to other communities in Toronto, and to have that cross conversation to realize that just because we're in Kensington Market, someone else is in Little Jamaica, someone else is in Parkdale, or even someone else is in Ottawa or Kingston or wherever. It's like, together we can work together. Together our situations aren't that different. And I think together through allyship and through just talking and socializing and being good people, while also fighting back, I think we can truly make that change. So I think that is important. I don't think you need a degree, you don't need a background in planning. I'm trying to de-plan or unplan myself right now because I don't want to do that, right? I have people all the time be like, I'm so interested, but I'm just an electrician, I don't know. And it's like, good, we want you, right? I don't want to talk to another planner, right? So I'm enough, so thank you.
I think the expertise that we have isn't in a degree, it's in lived experience, it's in the multifaceted aspects of who we are. We're all intersectional in many different ways, and if we can bring that, that's how we can come up with more innovative solutions. All right, Daniel.
I would say, one thing is really hard to come up with. I'm not sure it exists, but I do think one piece is that, friends and allies in a cause, I think being honest and clear with people is important. And I think social housing is an incredibly important thing, and I've worked on it personally. I have a couple projects with a bunch of it coming up. Like, I ardently believe in it, but like the Netherlands has the highest percentage of social housing in the Western world and one of the most grinding housing crises in the Western world. So I'd say that our housing system needs a lot more work. And I'd say that people who believe in justice, equality, in human flourishing, all those things, I'd invite everyone to a wide cause around housing abundance, which I know is not what everyone wants to hear, but I don't think you do people favors by only telling them, what they want. So, yeah.
To wrap up, one word from each of you that we want to leave the audience with. It sums up something to take away or your vision on this topic. One word. You can start, Daniel, or you still need to think about it?
I think my last comment was too successful.
Now is the time, really. I think there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of alignment. Now is the time to make things happen. If you're thinking maybe you're in a position to make something happen, make something change, likely you probably are. So let's go.
I love that. I'm going to just say community. I think we've talked about that a lot today, and that the more we get to know our neighbors, the more we discuss and amplify around solution and amplify our need for solution making, I think it'll go a long way. And so I'll say just community.
Funding is the word I'm going to use of the day. And I want to tie into what Cheryl was saying earlier, is that the city and the province and the federal government extract labor from our communities. Right now, we're involved in a project with the City of Toronto to build modular housing in our community. It's a fantastic project. I'm really happy it's there. However, every time I join a call, there's 6 city staff and 4 architects and the builders, and everyone's being paid. Who's not being paid is me. Like, I'm being paid by the Land Trust. That's the grant that I got through the Ontario Trillium Fund to work on a social finance campaign. I'm lying to them when I say that I'm going to the city meeting. And so it's like the city looks to us and various government look to communities as leaders. Oh, we want to work with the community. What does the community have to say? What is your input? And when you go to say, are we getting paid for this work? It's kind of like, oh, wait, no, but Yeah, it is still an IP, right? And it's like, we want to welcome these people in because we don't want to, nothing without, you know what I mean? We don't want to build these things without us, but it's also like, if the city's putting a budget forward, couldn't part of that budget be to pay the community? They hire so many consultants, or they hire so many staff, which is good. We need well-paying city jobs, right? But it's like, you know what I mean? We're stuck where it's like, either we get involved and we donate our labor, or we don't get involved at all. And it's like, the better, what's the worst evil is not being involved, but it's like how long can this last, right? How much can we say we value communities without actually paying them? So yeah, the word is funding.
I still haven't come up with one better than now. I think now is the right spirit of the
All right, well now community funding, that's what we need. Thank you so much, thank you for the time.
Okay, that was such a great conversation. So I do have a new question. I think definitely we're gonna get some answers for this one. But I actually wanted also to touch on some of the point that was on that panel. Because the fact that the deficit of housing is actually a real and massive issue, right? So, I think the point Daniel brought up about Sweden or whatnot having a lot of their housing being non-market, but not actually building, because that is something that we actually do see also in Canada with the co-op housing sector, right? They built a lot of affordable co-op housing and they met their individual needs, but there wasn't this cycle of perpetuating that development so that everybody's needs are met, right? So when we think about building non-market housing or building affordable housing, we did continuously be building that economy because our populations will be growing and the housing deficit is a real thing. So in the report we note that CMHC actually implies that there's a $3.5 million homes need to be built by 2031, and that is very, very significant. So CMHC estimates that across all sectors, that will take $1 trillion. And $1 trillion, what does that mean? So Stats Canada actually had put out a report saying that the housing stock in 2021 was worth $3.3 trillion. So we need $1 trillion to meet our demand in the next 10 years, and that really is the cost of a third of all the housing stock today. So really need to be building more housing. Okay, so my question for giving out this book is I would just actually like to hear from the audience. We've had a lot of great conversations in terms of panels. So I'm sure many great conversations just in the room here. I would love if someone could share with us what is something that you're taking away from this experience tonight in terms of a really key message that will help to motivate you or help to contextualize things going forward.
Hi. Some of you met me down there. I was take a seat. You all look good though, you all look good. I want to say is the most beautiful thing God can ever give anyone of us is pain. So whatever you're going through right now, just know you're going to get through it and come out of that situation stronger. So never lose hope.
Amazing, yeah. So that pain is also a reminder, right, to keep pushing that we're gonna get through it. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so Now we have our poet. Where? Where are you there? Okay, amazing. So, Rare, Natalie Chattergood, better known as Rare, is a multifaceted, Toronto-born, and raised creative, passionate in community building, creative writing, and photography. She's a self-taught, 5 times published photographer with photography and art featured across GTA. Her work each focuses on spotlighting key social issues and expresses it through her many projects. So we first worked with Rare. She is actually a poet at our screening of Nothing About Us documentary in the Center in Jamaica, and I was so enthralled by her poem that I had to invite her for tonight. And so if you please welcome Rare to share her poem with us.
Hi y'all, how you doing tonight? Yeah, y'all if you're in the building. Sorry, can't hear y'all. Give me a y'all if you're in the building. There we go. Energy makes the world go round, so I need a little bit from y'all, that's all good. So, I am Rare, Miss One of a Kind, so divine, and I'm a hard to find goddess. I am a multifaceted creative. I grew up in the heart of Etobicoke, grew up in a marginalized public housing community. I've seen a lot of things in my life. So it helped me to kind of formulate those emotions into poetry. I actually have a poetry book that I created around the Black Lives Matter movement that came out around 2 days ago? No, 2 years ago, sorry. Whoa, that's crazy. But yeah, that's a little bit about me I wanted to share. You guys can follow my journey on social media at rares.world. You can also get the book there. They are limited edition, and they also are sold in Kensington Market in the House of Moses. It's a Black-owned, Black-produced production, and I was able to reinvest the Black Lives Matter movement grant back into the Black community 100%. So my challenge and task today was to take information or like words or conversations that I had around the room and create a poem. Okay, so I'm going to read this poem that I made very briefly. DJ, can you turn up the tunes a little bit? So when we hear a poem, we snap. Can I get a little snap from y'all? Nice. So if you like the line or something resonates with you, I hope you do that. Right? So this poem is called The Roadmap because it's based on this event and I was inspired from many conversations. I also don't bite, so feel free to chat with me after. So it goes like this. We are gathered here today for change. May our hard work not go in vain. Seeing youth and families get involved, lived experiences will tell all. Reflect and revise. Accountability is responsibility. I said accountability is responsibility. We all play a part. They say trust the process, but we need action. It takes more than collective packing, not just reaction. Construction companies got against a slice of the pie. Toronto streets development notices on the rise. The city moves fast, but we don't want the crime in our lives. Cost of living, all sky high. Human rights protect our lives. We look up to leaders like they're holding a prize. Accountability is responsibility. I said accountability is responsibility. Building capacity, limitless possibilities. If funding was possible, trust gathers in centered communities. Funding fruitful folks. Representation matters. Our voice is just not for chatters. We speak and show our peace. We need some release from poverty. Shackles cannot hold you from solution-oriented goals. Engage, release, take a seat. Put the power to your mind, step by step, brick by brick. We got you. Accountability is responsibility. I said, Accountability is responsibility. We're headed to bigger dreams. Let's all build a team. CP planning, the scribing beam, across Canada making history. Crossing paths, land trusts are key. Beekeepers move the economy. Reflections to know, each step helps us grow. Collaboration builds our nation. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you. Please make sure to meet someone new within the space today. You never know who you can collaborate with, connect with, and grow with today. It's very important, so each one teach one. Even if there's something you learn from the panelists, we hope that you share the knowledge. Because the world goes round, all right? Thank you for having me. You can find me at Where's That World on Instagram. Peace.
Amazing. Thank you so much for blessing us with that beautiful poem. Who could I speak on in the poem? What can you ask for that? Amazing. Yeah, so thank you everybody for coming tonight. This is the third year we hosted the Roadmap Annual Party. Yeah, and I think it's the biggest crowd that we've had so far, and it really just warms my heart. One of the testaments to the success of our work is, kind of goes back to some things that we've been spoken about today, that there's a great hunger for this type of work, and I'm so grateful that the journey we've been on has enabled us to do this, and I really hope that we can continue to build on this journey. So City Planning actually, the first 7 years was just me grinding, and we were able to get one really substantial grant from CMHC. It was the Housing Supply Challenge. I had some really great conversations on the way through that process that helped us to get there, and I think that's really at the core of it. It's really about having really great conversations, but also having a really great project, and the project was really made successful because of the engagement from all of our partners, and a big part of today is to celebrate also the amazing work of our partners, and so over the last 2 years in Roadmap, we've actually engaged over 9,000 people and supported over 300 organizations in developing their professional capacity in affordable housing development. So we've supported over 17 inclusive neighborhood planning hubs, many of them in Toronto, Little Jamaica, Etobicoke Lakeshore, and Finch. We've supported with our partnership with the Urban Institute in the City of Toronto, confronting anti-direct racism to explore, how do we address this financial and investment gap around affordable housing. We've also supported Ottawa, Land Trust there, Hamilton, and we're really excited for the next steps of our journey. And so, again, thank you everybody for coming out today. So in the report, you'll see some of the things that we have planned out in terms of our next steps of the roadmap. So we're hoping to continue this journey of supporting community, addressing the funding gap for community, also building more professional development support services to help them to exchange knowledge between communities and to help move things further faster. So if you're interested in supporting us in this work, feel free to get in touch with any member of our team. And so with that, I think I'll close with also thanking also the amazing people who made this event possible. So we have Emily from How She Hustles, Javante Barker, Private Catering, PJ Anya Clark, Russell Pollard, the Urban Economy Forum, and Design Present. Everyone can please give these folks a welcome. Round of applause. So seamless and beautiful. And Gavin, who also has been a great lead in terms of getting this all together on the team. And so, so the report that you have in your hands is the condensed version of the report that you imagine. It's about 120 plus pages of things that I've been painstakingly working over. So check your inbox for that. We'll be coming through. So today the room remains open, so we'd love for folks to enjoy the rest of the night. So I'm going to stop rambling now and take care.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on all our social media platforms, and if you need more information, go to our website.